I don't, as Dominic said, I speak German. I don't speak German. I don't speak philosophy. So I'm far away on this panel. We have the amazing Peter Sloterdijk, a philosopher well known in Germany, and Peter Weibel, media expert, artist, and philosopher as well. And you've heard Luciano. And what we want to talk about is the impact of this infosphere on our society and our lives. And I don't know if my tablet will just, oh, I lost my quote from you. Here it is. So one quote, it's a very, very good book, Digital Revolution, from Luciano. I want to read one quick quote from that, because I think it sets up our conversation, which is that you said that we are slowly accepting the post-Turian idea that we are not Newtonian, standalone, and unique agents, some Robinson Crusoe on an island. Rather, we are informational organisms, inforgs you call them, mutually connected and embedded in an informational environment, the infosphere, which we share with other informational agents, both natural and artificial, that are also processing information logically and autonomously. So that is the sphere that we enter into, I think, and we want to try to look at the impact this has on society. I was here last year on the stage talking about my hero, Johannes Gutenberg, and how his invention changed the notion of information in society, changed our notion of society and of ourselves, changed the notion of nations and so on. So we go forward in a progression that these gentlemen have been brilliant at studying. And so, Peter Sloterdijk, I'd like to start with you and talking about, Luciano has a vision of a sphere. You do all your work in spheres and describing spheres and an evolution of spheres. How do you place this infosphere in our worldview and the change that is now brought to us?
First of all, we have to consider the fact that this great Greek metaphor, sphaira, is still one of the most powerful concepts when it comes to the question of how to redesign a concrete topology of contemporary existence. So we enter into a period where the discourse on spheres is restarting after the breakdown of the first cosmological talk about fear. So and also this term of infospheres belongs to a broad field of new approaches to spherological thinking. In geography, they talk about the lithosphere. This is the stone world. The stone ring inside they speak about the biosphere that contains living organisms. The term atmosphere has become one of the basic concepts of contemporary concern. In Greek, it simply means the sphaira of mist. Teilhard de Chardin, when it comes to the humanities, has introduced the concept of noosphere, which is the intellectual envelope that seems to keep living organisms on Earth together. Yuri Lotman, the great Russian semiologist, introduced the term of semiosphere as a new basic concept to the humanities. Régis Debray has made a contribution with four spherological concepts: the graphosphere, the logosphere, the videosphere, and their integration into something that he calls the hypersphere. And in France, they start talking about something what they call jihadosphere, which could be a new approach to the question of Islam and its transformations. So all that reminds us the fact that the second age of theological talking has started. And my approach to the concept of infosphere could best be interpreted by remembering the structure of the medieval cosmology. Well, you know, medieval man and cosmologists thought that the Earth is in the center of a vast system of spheres, each of which is determined by a celestial body. The sun, the moon, and 5 planets form a ladder, or a system of envelopes that are ultimately contained by a last envelope, a last sphere that carries the name firmamentum. You know, it is the sphere where the fixed stars were located. It is, as it were, God's condominium, where he has taken his residence together with angels, saints, and immortal intelligences. And this firmamentum, the breakdown of the firmamentum, gave the initial push to that what we call modern world. The real Copernican turn was not the fact that they discovered the heliocentric system. The real breakthrough towards modernity was the disparation, the annihilation of the firmamentum. And then all of a sudden, the Earth was alone in the cosmos and had no ultimate container anymore. And my approach to that concept of infosphere is that humanity is about to replace the lost firmamentum now under the technological forms that help us to surround us in a completely new way by an artificial firmamentum that is necessarily dynamic. It is not yet a complete container. 60% of humanity are still offline. But there is movement, there is progress, there is this very strong Matthew effect in this system. You know, Matthew effects go back to the famous saying of Jesus that he who has already will be given even more, and he who does not have will be taken away what he had. This has nothing to do with neoliberal thinking, but it is a naive and perfect anticipation of what we call positive feedback. That success leads to success, virtuosity creates further virtuosity, and so forth. And riches create other riches. So,
if I may bring in Peter Weibel now. So you see this replacement of the organizational structure that we have of the world, and I go back to Gutenberg. We're in a media conference, and so we think that media is rather central to the world too. We think that media control information. We had a business model that I think is what's really dying, is the mass media business model goes away. With it, the idea of the mass. That was a sphere that we were in. We were defined externally. Now we define ourselves in new ways internally. Media gets democratized. More people can be media now. You study media and art and design, and how do you see the impact of this notion of the infosphere on media, or vice versa, the changes in media on the infosphere?
Thank you for the opportunity to describe the deep effect of this infosphere on our media. To understand this, I have to go back to the roots, to the sources of infosphere. We owe the infosphere to the progress of physics and mathematics, because physics allowed us to discover in the 19th century the existence of electromagnetic waves. Before electromagnetic waves, everything that was transported or communicated needed a carrier of a message, a body, a ship, a soldier, whatever. For the first time, when we discovered with electromagnetic waves, we could build devices to make use of it, to send voices, text, images, wireless. without a messenger. So the first time the message could be distributed without messenger. So we had the mass media, radio, television, and now the wireless internet. But what has happened is really not understood. What has happened is the following. In the ancient time, we had things and we could give the names to things. But we could not turn a name to a thing. When I say it's a chair, I cannot say the chair becomes a real object. Then the next step was we had things we could give images to these things. We have visual culture, we have philosophy, literature, etc. But finally, and we had even sounds. But now, with the mathematical theory of information, Server said digitization means a progress of mathematical theory in the world. And now, the first time, we can turn words into data, in bits of information. We can turn sounds in bits of information, in data. We can turn images. And finally, we can even turn things into data. And now, the first time, in printing, the first time in the history of media, we can say we have data, and data turns into a text. And finally, with the 3D printing, we can turn data into thing. I give an example from our own institute, center, also my museum, which is a research center. Some years ago, there was a robot at the Mars with 2 cameras. He made a picture of the thing, the surface of the Mars. So he turns the picture into data. The data has been transmitted wireless, remotely to Houston, and stored there. We know when we got the data from Houston, we built a robot and a program, and now the robot needs 4 months to make this picture again. So another thing, we have a camera at the surface of the ocean near Vancouver. It's 1 square meter. This object, the wave, is turned to an image, then turned into data, remotely sent to that camera, to Karlsruhe, and turned into a floating object again. So what is the revolution today is really that we can data, that media can produce things. There's a famous philosophy book we discussed several times. It's called How to Make Things with Words. But it does not function. Today with data we can make things with words. That means we have, certainly for the first time, a reversibility between real world, so-called real world, and so-called media world. And to say it abstractly, a little bit what you said in your last sentence about inscription, is difficult. What we do now with the infosphere, describe, depict, or inscribe. To make it more abstract, we can say today, by say data, it's infosphere. Reality is what we can describe or inscribe mathematically. This is reality. So our media have changed completely our relation. To give a last example, Google is in fact not the future. Because as Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect, has said, the 20th century was an equation called machinery, material, man. And I say the next century is the equation media, data, and man. And Google makes a mixture. Google has helicopters, but it's the transportation of goods. It's still 19th century. It's the transportation of goods with the help of the internet. But according to the disruption theory, it will vanish. Because these people will come who understand the infosphere. That means you make a communication of information, of data, and then you turn them back into things. This is just now the threshold, which we discussed.
So let me play off. There's been a lot of discussion all day today, this being Europe and this being media, about data protection, Datenschutz, and the idea in a sense that we fear that we become our data, that this data is us, and if it's shared, it's a violation, and this is an issue. I see a larger question going on here about how we define ourselves, how we view ourselves, in what definition and sphere we put ourselves. Is the notion of a nation still valid? Is the notion of the mass still valid? Do we define ourselves in new communities across the world now that we're connected across the world? Do we put ourselves in our own spheres? If that makes any sense, Luciano.
Okay. One last remark, what you said. It changes even our nature. A chicken, when you take the genetic code of a chicken, it is about 13 million data. Our human genetic code is only 3 times as much, 30 million data. So it means there's no big difference. And now we can start to think, how do we reprogram?
Yeah.
This was
But I'm also
subject.
curious about our identity in society, our relationship to society, where we see ourselves. As you study this notion of the infosphere, what impact does this have on our relationships with each other? Then I'll come back to you.
Indeed. No, you're completely right. I mean, if we look at the past, for a long time, say 3 or 4 generations ago, we used to define, and I'm talking not philosophers, but everyday culture, what you really deal with. We had a very mechanical view of us. You know, we are bodies, we interact with the world, we do things, we change things. There's a mechanics, there's energy, dissipation, entropy, and so on. That's the kind of, call that the Newtonian picture of ourselves. Today, it's much easier, more natural, more intuitive to describe ourselves in terms of who you are on Facebook, the kind of tweets you send, the search you have on Google, the taste you express on Amazon. You build a whole profile which is way more informational and therefore Turing rather than mechanical and therefore Newton. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good thing to do. I'm talking about what's happening in our society. We, to use a strong word for philosophers, we conceptualize, we understand the world in terms of information. So you ask someone and says, what's DNA? Oh, it's like a piece of software. Information. You ask, what is a chair and what is reality? Oh, they talk about fields, time, space. What is that? Information. You talk about who is Jenny and Peter. I don't know, but they are your friends. Never met them. They are friends on Facebook. They are profiles. So this overall perspective, which becomes a sort of everyday philosophy, is very informational. Do we want to take care of that? Yes. Are we identifying ourselves in terms of the information we share? Yes. Should we exaggerate in taking too much care of that? No. Relax. I give blood. I have my hair cut. It's my body, and it's still not giving away. I donate my organs, so I can give my data. In fact, actually, we're working in other contexts on a data donation protocols. You should be able to say, when I'm dead, all my data go to science. Why not?
Professor Sloterdijk, how do you see distance? Physical distance now. If we move from the Newtonian world, we move that notion of distance and spheres. Do we as a society have the power to define what community we belong to, what nation we belong to, how we define ourselves? Is that externally defined still? Does this have any impact on how we see our relationship to our neighbors and our society? That's what I'm trying to ask.
I think this infospherical reflection must begin with the concept of speed. The infospherical reality is all about speed, a speed that destroys distances. So it reshapes the world in terms of synchronicity. We are entering into a completely new concept of reality because virtually everything will happen at the same moment or will be perceived or realized in real time or with minimal delays. Yeah? And this reality of minimal delays will make us jump into a kind of reality for which we are simply not prepared. Yeah? We must not forget that in the antiquity, when for the first time the concept of cosmopolis was conceived, this was a reaction to the fact that people were condemned to coexist in large social units that counted up to 30, 40 million people. By the way, the Roman Empire, at the moment of its biggest extension, was half the population of modern Italy. But nevertheless, the stress of coexistence was so strong that they were condemned to reshape their whole vocabulary, to develop a new grammar of humanity. And that's what we call humanities until today, yeah? Because the man, as man, had to be reshaped in according to the challenge of this coexistential stress. Yeah? How to be a neighbor of 30 or 40 million people, how to become a neighbor of the human race as a whole. And this coexistential stress has increased tremendously in the age of synchronization and high-speed communication. And that's the real challenge. Yeah? We have to learn to coexist with 6, 7, 8 billion co-inhabitants of this condominium called planet Earth. Yeah? And we simply do not know how it works, yeah? Because from our biological design, we are animal designed to coexist with 20, 50, 100, 120 people, just as much as your address book can contain. Yeah? And now this expansion is a real challenge.
So this addresses our relationship with each other and with our environment and with animals. What about our relationship with technology? Part of what we also hear, I think, inherent in the discussion, partly we had this morning, is a fear of technology and the technologists and the power that they have through technology, the power they have through data. Data becomes a scary word sometimes. When data is just information, data is a pathway to knowledge, isn't it? So how do we, Luciano gave us some rules about how to make a better internet. How do you see our relationship with technology?
The fear comes because rules, moralic or ethic rules, which have been developed in the analog time, don't fit anymore for today. Yeah? I'll give an example. No? The old analog world was the logic of production. You produced an object, and then you could own it. Yeah? So when you produced a record, you could own the record. When you listen to a record in radio, you don't own it. Yeah? So like Jeremy Rifkin described it, and you describe it, now we are shifting by the data world into the logic of distribution. You distribute something. And then you can maybe share it, you can develop the common goods. But the concept of possession doesn't function anymore. So the logic of distribution means that our old rules, something is yours, doesn't fit anymore. So we turn from an economy of producer, an economy of possession, to an economy of usage, of user. And this is a very difficult shift. And therefore, so many business models go wrong because we don't have the rules. I give you the best example. In the Bible, the 10 Commandments, number 10 says you should not envy your neighbor, his wife, his commodity and house. But you don't have the rule, you should not envy your neighbor's data.
Luciano, you write about ethics. You look at the ethics of this world. I read a story this morning. There's a fight going on right now in the Bitcoin world, for example, where Bitcoin is extra governmental. It has no governmental structure. A blockchain is trying to figure this out. There's a fight over the law of that community. There's a fight over what's right and wrong in that use of that technology. There's a fight over the law that we're creating. Professor Lawrence Lessig from Harvard famously said that code is law. Law is an expression of ethical beliefs of society. You gave us advice about how to think of technology and the internet. How do you look at the ethical challenges we have to deal with in terms of creating new codes and structures and laws, even around nations?
That's an easy question. I think that there are a couple of risks about the new legislation that we need. The first risk is that we had decent solutions for the past that we want to upgrade, adapt, but basically not change. If you think of Europe in particular, data protection, for example, we like to think that we got it right, most of it, since day one, and therefore we just have to do more of the same, just better of it. That's a risk, because it means that you are self-constraining yourself within a box that may be the wrong box. And I'm not saying we are doing a bad job. I'm saying we're not thinking in terms of true novelty. And I can give you, for anyone here who has been exposed to the right to be forgotten, the example of the right to be forgotten. We probably need new rules. We can't simply tweak old rules to make sure that we get there. The second problem that seems to me an obstacle towards new regulations, as you were saying, therefore thinking afresh what we need to develop, is to think that at some point there is no human responsibility, that we will delegate, we will outsource the ultimate responsibility for our decisions to some agents, corporate, hybrid, technological, but not us. As if there were some magic gods somewhere that they decide our life. That is a risk that we should not run, because behind any bad decision, there's a human being. And we better take care of that.
It's been a crime to deal with these huge issues with these great brains in 45 minutes. So I'm over the line, but I'm going to ask one more question and ask for a quick answer. I go back to Gutenberg. I end with Gutenberg once again. To my mind, Gutenberg was a millennial moment, a change in society, a change. It created the notion of information as we have today. It created the notion of the container of the book. It created an industry. It created all kinds of things. Is the internet, is the connectivity of the whole world simultaneously at the same time, is that a millennial moment equivalent to the Gutenberg revolution in the book? Down the line.
Yeah, anyhow, it is the only analogon that we have, you know, except the cosmopolitan of the revolution of philosophy in antiquity. So the only encouraging experience that the human kind has made so far is the success of what we call Renaissance, or the entering the Gutenberg galaxies. But we have to see in the traces of Marshall McLuhan that print, the printing technology was also a factor of world wars. You know? That is, there's a dramatic chapter in McLuhan's Understanding Media where he says, when he speaks about the press as the architect of nationalism, and within this big analogon, there is an uncanny element.
Yeah. Better?
In fact, was not the alphabet. This is important. It was just the mobilization of the alphabet. So you had letters, and you could have suddenly you had mobile letters. So we should not give him an honor which it doesn't deserve. So in that sense, when you understand that when you have a printing process, when you have letters which are mobile, it's easier to make a book. But the book is still a carrier, a material carrier of information, which the internet is not.
Yeah.
So it means the internet is everything what has to do with it is a much greater invention than Guggenheim. So what we are now entering, so Guggenheim was a version of the Infosphere, version light. But now with the data and with the computers, we have the heavy version of the Infosphere.
And Luciano?
I think it's a part of that transformation, but it's bigger than the Gutenberg transformation. Gutenberg is about recording and transmitting information. The internet is about recording, transmitting, and processing. Now, that processing doesn't happen in your ordinary book. Your ordinary book doesn't process that information. Your web page will process your information. Your Internet of Things will process your information. So it will be Gutenberg 2.0, if you allow me.
Dr. Burda would like to ask a question. Mike? Dr. Burda? Yes.
Hubert will sprechen.
I think the big difference is that the Gutenberg revolution was a semantic revolution. It was on words. It was more the left side of the brain. And what makes this fourth revolution so powerful is the iconic turn. It is the icon. If you look what the young people around us are doing, taking pictures, sending them on Facebook, and they can see Mr. Sloterdijk, Mr. Weibel, Luciano, and have some comments, but it's the iconic turn. It is the right side of the brain together with music, with motion, which leads to, especially in the generation of my children, leads to a new perception of the world. This makes it so powerful. And with Facebook and with all the new technologies, this is the key. And the power of images. And it will never go back. It's okay, but it has an immense impact on journalism, on philosophy, on teaching. And when we heard today about Tom Enders and why in so many managements in Germany the reluctance has been so strong for not entering into the digital revolution. It was a generation problem that my generation is educated in text, in the left side, in what has done our education, our schools so wonderful. But we have to see this is probably gone, and we have to adapt towards new technologies, and that's what could be called the infosphere. Especially the most interesting in the infosphere will be that the devices communicate with each other. We don't know really what they're doing with us, but the devices communicate with us, and we can take a notion. Yeah.
Dr. Werder, this is why the first time I met you when you launched Focus magazine way back many years and you came through New York, I've always admired you particularly for looking to the future and trying to reinvent what media is and what its role is in society. And you've made this company, you've made that its goal. I think we are way over.
Way over time.
But I want to thank very much our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.